Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Bombercast Round 14 post Carlton win edition. I'm your regular co-host, The Grizz. Here with me is Bonta34. Bonta, always good to get a win, even better when it's against Carlton.
Yeah, it was a good game. It was sort of interesting. I thought being at the ground, I haven't been to a game for a while, and it's great atmosphere. You sort of forget how good the atmosphere is, especially when we get on a roll and start banging through some goals. But it really was, I think, a tale of two halves, wasn't it? I mean, that first quarter, I thought we dominated and didn't make the most of our opportunities. And that second quarter, I think you could say the same about them. And then after that, we just blew them out of the park and did what good sides, dare I say, good sides do, and that is put the foot to the throat of the weaker opposition and don't let them in towards the back end.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So they had more scoring shots than we did. I genuinely think it just came down to who took the most out of the momentum. So we were chatting with Jeremiah last week, and we were sort of discussing whoever won this game would basically be who got the game on their terms. And a bit like what you said, both teams really had it on their terms, one half each. I think Carlton got the game they wanted in the first half. They just couldn't convert. That 6-16 and I think they were 3-8 or something at half time, or no more than that. They were 40 points. So they were they were 5-10 or something at half time, and then we got the game on our terms in the second half and kicked away, and we made the most of it. And I think that's really just it, conversion at the end of the day. Oh, they were 3-10. My bad. Yep.
Yeah, they were 3-10 at halftime, and you talk about the conversions, and Carlton did have more shots, but they weren't good shots. A lot of Carlton's shots, especially in that first quarter and a half, were running bombs from 60 meters out towards an open goal square and hoping they just get the bounce through, which I did say on our board, and I've said to a few people as well, that it's sort of, to me, that approach from Carlton really did highlight that they aren't a team. They are just a bunch of individuals running around wearing the same jumper, kicking a football, because they just don't look for each other. So, they're all busy trying to be the hero, and they're all busy focused on their own game, and no player emphasised that greater on Sunday night than Charlie Curnow, I thought, which you compare to our guys who were prepared to do the team thing, do the little short 45-meter kick, 45-degree kick, sorry, do the handballs sideways, backwards, hit up a target inside 50 instead of just trying to be the hero and kicking a 60-meter goal, all that sort of stuff. It was a big contrast, I thought. And yeah, as a result, we got the chocolates. And Carlton, dare I say it, are probably onto their next era, because I can't see Vossi getting past the end of this season.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching Carlton because I can see the talent in that team. What I can't see is how it works together. I would agree in some parts with you in that they certainly do look like 18 individuals as opposed to a collective. But I reckon it's less about them trying to be hero and just they're all working in silos. They're all sort of focused on we'll do our role, and they just sort of forget the greater context of the team. And sometimes that means having a greater understanding of, okay, my job is to pressure, if I'm Matt Owies, but I'm just getting sucked in the contest of the pressure so much, and I'm leaving my defender one-on-one, 2-on-1 versus Harry Mackay or something, and just that lack of sort of ability to work cohesively. Which I talked to Jeremiah about this last year. I feel like their Carlton 2023 is Essendon in 2022. Like, just that they had the good year in 2022. They come into this year with raised expectations, even though they probably shouldn't have. And it's all just falling apart. And you can just see it disintegrate. And I think you and I saw that last year, didn't we? With the Bombers. Just started poorly and never recovered. But it'll be interesting because if Voss goes, then the entire, well, at least the president has to go, because Voss was his choice. Sweeping changes, external review, appoint Voss. If they're going to sack Voss, then the president has to go. And as soon as your president and your coach goes, you start talking about, sort of sweeping changes through your club. And it is a new era at that point. And just from a list management perspective, I don't know where they go. They're tied up against a cap. It's really draft picks or anything. But we'll move off Carlton because this is the Bombercast, not the Bluescast. But I was really impressed with how the team in the second half pivoted. So Zach Merritt going forward was a genius move by Scott, but was only going to work if Zach bought into it. And you just saw first, minute of the game, kicks a goal. I think he had 7 score involvements, 6 of them in the second half. Just, I was really impressed by how sort of team-centric we were and how, we're willing to pivot and try something different.
Yeah, exactly right. With Zach going forward, it was fantastic. And look, this isn't the Carlton podcast, but you're right. The team centric, it does sort of start there because our players brought in. Zach went forward, it was all good. Whereas you compare that to Carlton, Zach went forward, and all of a sudden, you had Ed Kerno, who'd been tagging him, didn't have a role to do, and suddenly he was running forward of the ball trying to get the cheap kicks. So yeah, it was a great idea because it got Zach into the game, got him out of a spot that he was getting beaten in. And at the same time, amazingly somehow, it seemed to cause Carlton to just absolutely fall apart, which was just fascinating to watch. And obviously, through the middle on Sunday night, we rave about Nick Martin because he was just outstanding in that first half. I think he had 18 touches to half time. But then you look and you go, Jai Caldwell had 25-1, Ben Hobbs had 24. And all of a sudden, that midfield that is missing Shield, Parish and Setterfield, as well as, and you could probably say, look, they probably missed Merritt a little bit on Sunday night because he really didn't have much influence in there. It took it up to a midfield that's still pretty highly rated in Cripps and Walsh and Chera and co. So, yeah, our midfield was very, very pleasing on Sunday night, particularly because we didn't need any of our, A-grade top-line midfielders to be in there for it to happen.
Yeah, and Carlton sort of beat us up around the ball in that first half. Like I said, they got the game on their terms, and they were getting it forward to centre a lot, but it wasn't with any great efficiency, as you pointed out. It was all sort of shallow entries, long shots at goal, which is you can sort of live with that as a team. But I just want to also talk about that young midfield. Archie Perkins' job on Paddy Cripps was excellent. Like you could just tell that there's a way to go with Cripps now as that big athletic midfielder that is physical enough to stay with him and run off. And I thought Archie basically kept him to 9 disposals at halftime, 19 by the end of the game. He had 139 meters gained with 19 disposals. So what's that? Less than 7 meters of disposal. 7 meters of disposal. Just completely shut him out. 4 kicks, 3 effective. We still weren't dominant around the contest, but where we got them was our tackle pressure and our spread. They just couldn't go with our legs, and you could see with that running centre bounce goal, which was Martin to Hobbs to Caldwell to back to Caldwell to Menzies, like. A lot to like, and I did want to ask you this question. We haven't got take it or leave it per se, but do you think Shield, Setterfield, and Parish all fit back into this team? I have my own view, but I just wanted to ask you first to get your view on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about that at the moment, and there was a bit of discussion in the Parish thread, and I said it in the Parish thread at the time that bringing or holding on to Parish beyond this year is not necessarily about the fact that he's going to be better than everyone. Just gives us a bit of depth. But in answer to your direct question, I think all three do come back in. I just don't see how you can keep that kind of talent out. I have enjoyed watching, Caldwell and Hobbs and even, Snelling doing his forward line pressure and Guelph, I thought was pretty average on Sunday night. I think he's one you could probably, based on Sunday night's efforts, you could swap him out anyway. But yeah, I just don't see how those three don't fit back in. Setterfield just gives us something that we miss. Although having said that, Carlton's big bodies and we didn't miss it. So maybe we don't need him back in the side. But Parish and Shield, they're still straight up walk back in, no dramas for mine.
Yeah, I think they'll fit back into the team. I'm not sure they all walk into starting midfielders. Setterfield and Parish probably do, but Shield might need to find himself used to playing wing half forward. So he did it against St Kilda and GWS. Well, GWS earlier this year. He was quite effective. And I'm just looking at it going, Merritt, Parish, Setterfield, you keep Caldwell in there, Hobbs, Perkins, Nick Martin is starting to run out of midfield rotation very quick. And it doesn't really matter in the way that the game's played anyway, because there's such huge numbers around the ball. If you're playing wing or half forward and it's on your side of the field, you basically turn into a midfielder anyway. But I think at least this year they will, but there will be questions next year. I just don't think Parish and Setterfield are the ones who move out. But that's a question for the
I look at the team from Sunday night and straight away I just go, well, Guelphy comes out, Snelling comes out, and probably Phillips comes out.
If you're playing wing or half forward and it's on your side of the field, you basically turn into a midfielder anyway. But I think at least this year they will, but there will be questions next year. I just don't think Parish and Setterfield are the ones who move out. But that's a question for the
I look at the team from Sunday night and straight away I just go, well, Guelphy comes out, Snelling comes out, and probably Phillips comes out because we necessarily won't have to play 2 rucks going forward, hopefully, depending on what happens, obviously, with Wiedemann. But if Wiedemann comes out, then, you're still playing your 2 rucks and you play 2 metre Peter as your tall target alongside the resting ruck. So I look at that and go, that's just 3 changes, no brainers to me. But yeah, I don't see any reason why Parish, there's a lot of talk, we've been doing it without Parish. We have been, but we still haven't been dominating clearances. We got beaten around the ground on Sunday night. We won center clearances, but around the ground we got beat. I just don't see how anyone can argue that having someone like Parrish in there is not a positive. It's just mind blowingly stupid to me.
Yeah, and you look at the teams that we've played since he's been out, with the exception of Brisbane, it's been, what was it? It was Richmond, who are basically bottom six at the moment, West Coast, North Melbourne, Carlton. But it's not exactly murderer's row there. Whereas if you look at the 5 weeks that prior to that, when Parrish was playing, it was what? It was Port Adelaide, Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, St Kilda, and GWS. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The context is important there. But
yeah, one thing I did want to touch on is our back six again. I know we talk about it a lot, but if you look at our name back six in Ridley, Redmond, McGrath, Laverde, Heppel, and Zirk, they had 109 disposals on Sunday night. 104 of those disposals were effective. That's insane numbers. And the thing is, I know people disagree with effective disposal and disposal efficiency, and they're right. It's not an exact science, but that's still insane for your back six to generate that quality of ball movement out of your back 50. Moving it forward. No wonder that we won the game. I mean, if your back six is going to be traveling at greater than 95% by disposal efficiency, you're going to win a lot of football games.
Yeah, particularly when I think the stat is going at the moment that the teams that make the grand final every year basically score 60 to 70% of their scores off turnover. So if you win the ball out your back 50 and you can transition it well, you're in good stead. And I think that's why we're the best back to forward team in the competition in terms of turning a rebound 50 into an inside 50. And that's why our defense really does look after the ball. Now, part of that, we play a very high uncontested mark game, so it's easy to get your disposal efficiency number up when you're hitting short targets, but it's a symptom of the process, right? So we play an uncontested mark game, and that worked because Carlton couldn't spread with us. So we were switching it from side to side in defence consistently, and Carlton's forward line just didn't have the legs to chase us. And you could just tell that it was working. Dyson Heppel had 23 disposals, but he only had 97 metres gained. So there's a lot of lateral disposals there. But, he wasn't turning it over, which is the main point. And disposal efficiency as a rule is a really helpful guide as opposed to an exact number. If you've got a really high disposal efficiency, it means you're looking after the ball. Take or leave 5%. Because I think if you kick it longer than 45 metres and provided it's not intercepted directly, it's an effective kick. So, you got to take that into account. But I know you're probably passionate is probably the wrong word about this, but just a note on Brendan Zirk-Thatcher. How did you see his game on the weekend? I thought he got exposed one-on-one a little bit against Harry Mackay. Now, I don't think he's Robinson Crusoe there. Harry Mackay is an All-Australian caliber forward, and he got a lot of free kicks because he has that notoriety. But how did you see Zirk's game on the weekend? Because I think with the way Baldwin's playing in the VFL, Zirk's not vulnerable at the moment, but it may not be long.
Yeah, look, I didn't have any issues. It's the same as when we talked about him after the West Coast game. I didn't have any great issues with Zirk on Sunday night because people seem to be of this opinion at the moment that Mackay's out of form and is useless and all this sort of stuff. The reality is he's out of form in front of the goals. He's still he's still doing very well around the ground. So if you look at Harry's game on Sunday night, he got that. He missed that snap around the corner from 35 metres out, which is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. Didn't make the distance. But he only took 4 marks. So, he only took 4 marks for the whole game. So if you're saying you're giving away 1 mark per quarter to an All-Australian quality forward, you're probably going to take that. I don't see why you don't take that. Of course, the issue is that Zirk gave away 4 free kicks and Harry got 4 free kicks, and people saying, well, he's panicked, but it did appear to me there was a period there in that second quarter where the umpires were just seemingly determined to give Harry Mackay a goal because he just kept getting some really soft free kicks. There was one there where he actually ran back with his back to the ball, grabbed Zirk's jumper, and went to sort of ragdoll Zirk. So Zirk grabbed hold of him because they had the jumper, and Mackay turned around. The umpire paid a free kick against Zirk, and it's like, well, hang on, they've got each other. There was that one that he got his goal from where Zirk didn't actually push him or chop. He didn't even chop his arm. Didn't actually get anywhere near his arm. Just basically, sort of canned into his back, but was still contesting. Didn't push, didn't do anything. So it was a good it was good body contest. And the interesting part was, Jack Silvani did the same thing to Andrew McGrath in the last quarter, but because Jack Silvani's the forward, he got away with it. So, I just looked at, again, I think, people get a little bit frustrated because Zerk, when he makes a mistake being the last man in defense, it does stand out at the time. It stands out and it looks horrible.
Yeah.
It looks horrible. But if you just take a deep breath, watch his game the next day, you look back and you go, 2 free kicks that probably weren't there, 4 marks over a game. It's actually not that bad. It's a pretty handy game. And Baldwin, I know, is still absolutely tearing up the VFL. I just question, is he a better option than Zerk for someone like, Harry McKay? Because Kane's not huge, is he? He's only 193 centimeters. So
he's only I think a couple centimeters. So he's 194. He's only 2 centimeters shorter than Zerk. So which when you're talking about key defenders, isn't that big? But I think your main point still stands in that he did pretty well, considering they actually had 15 more inside 50s than we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Mackay and Curnow kicked 3 goals, 4 and 2 absolute non-scores between them. I think you're right. You take that most days of the week, to be honest.
I mean, Charlie Curnow is exactly what I was doing exactly what I was saying earlier in the podcast about trying to be the hero. I mean, I've said it on the board, and I'm going to say it again. I know this isn't Blues podcast, but it absolutely blew my mind in the first quarter when he was 60 metres out. He had 2 players by themselves in the pocket. One was 40 metres out. One was 25 metres out. He looked directly at them and he elected to play on and try and kick the goal from 65 metres. And I just sat there and went, you cannot be serious. If I was Michael Voss, I would have benched him for the quarter and gone, that is the shittest player you will see tonight. It was just horrendous.
I thought in that last quarter, I think it was him and Owies, both were there, and it was clearly Owies' ball. Like, I know there's been a couple of key forwards in the media going, oh, it's a key forwards area, stay out of it. But Owies was in the best position to take that mark, and you could tell he thought Curnow was there and pulled out, and Curnow didn't go for the ball. And so it's one of those things that it's like, Cole Langford running off after a free kick to the interchange. It just looks bad. You can understand how it happened. It just looks horrific. But speaking of key forwards, it's been, 20 minutes. We still haven't talked about this guy yet. So it's probably an error on our behalf. Just a handy 5 on return for Peter Wright, as if he never left Bonds.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually discussing with some North Melbourne posters on their board prior to their game, because there was that rumour that he was coming back, and they were sort of saying, oh, you can't bring him back in the AFL. You've got to give him VFL match fitness first. And I said, you don't take your Ferrari out of the garage to drive it down to the supermarket. That's not what you do with your top line. And proof was on Sunday night. He's a gun. He's still a gun, and playing him in the VFL would have been an absolute bloody disgrace. And Brad Scott quite rightly brought him straight back in, and it didn't look like he missed a beat. I mean, that third quarter where he kicked 3, that was almost the Bulldogs of 2021 game, where he just sort of took the game by the scruff of his neck and led us to the promised land. Because without him there to kick those 3. Does the third quarter unfold like it did? I don't know. I'd say it probably doesn't, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because the match fitness thing is, we tend to, our injury list sort of prognosis tends to be really conservative, and it seems like they're incorporating into that an extra 2 or 3 weeks to get them to sort of match fitness at some capacity. But the thing about Peter Wright is he played basically as a stay-at-home full forward. I'm not sure how much fitness you need, to be honest. And the other thing is it was a shoulder injury, so he could still run.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly
it wasn't like his tank. It's not like a groin or a knee where you're not running for 5 weeks. Like, he was still able to do a fair bit of fitness, get on the bike, do that sort of stuff. But what he gave us was something that we've sort of been piecemealing together with Phillips and Wiedemann and a little bit of Draper, which was just a focal point in attack, and someone that, even if he's not getting the ball, as soon as he was on the move, you could tell 2 or 3 Carlton defenders were, pivoting their heads, looking to where he was, and getting drawn into the contest, and it was opening up space for other forwards. That goal to Zach Merritt doesn't happen at the start of the third without his man basically running straight in front of Peter Wright to try chop off that short kick. So that's what he does for us. And, it was probably a good week to bring him in because now he has a week to recover if he was a bit sore, a bit tired before the big game in Perth in a fortnight. But it was great to have him back because I think we saw he missed his ability to take a mark and kick straight at least at the start of the game.
Then you got our other key forward in Wiedemann, and he wasn't great. Let's be honest, but it always amuses me because he wasn't great, but statistically, I mean, Peter Wright took 7 marks, Wiedemann took 5. Peter Wright had 8 touches, Wiedemann had 14. Wright kicks straight, so gets the 5. Wiedemann doesn't kick straight, has 2, and I think he missed another one as well. So if he kicked straight and kicked 3, then all of a sudden we're talking about the renaissance of Sam Wiedemann on Sunday night. But yeah, his confidence in front of goal is just shot to pieces. But having said that, hilariously, much like Harry Mackay for Carlton, he's still providing a little something between the arcs, and I'm just not sure at the moment. Do you drop him? I mean, what's your take, Chris? Do you take him out of the side now, or do you?
It's all. So my thing is, you don't drop him unless you have a replacement. And so, who's the replacement on the VFL? It's not Patrick Voss. Patrick Voss, and I've said this 1,000 times. Patrick Voss is vying for the same spot as Kyle Langford and Jake Stringer. He's not vying for that genuine key position forward post. He's an oversized mid-sizer, if that makes sense. And then you've got basically Jaden Hunter, Kane Baldwin, if you want to see him forward, but I think he's probably set in defence now. So it's really, with Harry Jones injured, it's him or Jaden Hunter, and Jaden spent the club for 5 minutes. So I don't think you can drop Wiedemann unless you're going to go the 1 key forward and the 2 genuine rucks. I'm with you in the sense that he gets to the ball enough. It's this weird thing with him where there are so many times where you think, oh, he's going to mark this, and he gets his both hands to it and just drops it. Just gets the dropsies, or he gets, he makes a great lead to Stringer, gets the ball, Stringer hits him on the tit, lines up, kicks a point, barely scrapes it in. So you sit there and you go, he does 90% of the work. It's just that last 10%. And I think it is all above the head because historically kicking has been fine for him, but it's not this season. So clearly there's something mental going on there. But I don't think you can drop him just because you don't have a replacement for starters. But he's doing enough, like you said, around the ground.
I don't know if you don't have a replacement because Hunter was very good in the VFL against Carlton. I mean, we got belted in the VFL. He still took 9 marks, kicked 4 goals, and there is that little bit of romance about giving him his debut in WA. So,
well,
there is always that chance, especially if they keep going with the 2 ruckmen. Because thing is, if you're going to only go with 1 ruckman, I keep playing Wiedemann because I don't want to put Wright into the ruck, and I sure as hell aren't throwing Hunter into the ruck. But yeah, there's something about me that says I reckon they could really give a chance to Hunter, and I'm also just wondering when the other one in the VFL is when Sardis is going to make his debut because 25 touches. If he does that again, there's going to be Essendon fans baying for blood if he doesn't get brought in.
Yeah, I don't think you bring Sardis into the game against Fremantle, but I think you could definitely bring him in maybe the week after that, or I think that's Adelaide in Melbourne, and then we've got Port Adelaide in Melbourne as well. So you've got 2 games sort of in Melbourne that you could debut him. I don't know, like, can you go back to Sam Wiedemann if you drop him for Jaden Hunter? Like,
you can absolutely go back to him. If you bring Hunter in and he's clearly still just a massive step below AFL level, and VFL's where he's at the moment. I have no hesitations bringing Wiedemann back in, but it's interesting.
I just think Wiedemann. I've said this for a few weeks now. He's not playing badly. He's playing low on confidence. So is him getting dropped to the VFL for a guy that's played 1.5 VFL games for us in Jaden Hunter going to help his confidence? When he does so much other stuff fine, he has moments where he just doesn't lead or he gets caught ball watching. That again, it's a bit like Zerk Thatcher. Like when he stuffs up, it looks terrible. But I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, the problem, look, I say the same thing about Wiedemann that I said about Harry Jones at the start of the year, in that it's all well and good to back him in, but at some point, his lack of confidence and inability to hold the marks, as you've pointed out, it's going to come back and bite him in the ass. So at some point, it's better to drop him to the VFL just to give him some confidence. Just say, look, we're dropping you back. Go back and take 12 marks in the VFL and kick a couple of goals, and we'll bring you back.
Yeah, but look, that's the flip side, isn't it? He might get dropped, and he might be go, oh, that sucks. Then he kicks 6, and he's got his tail up, and then you've got your problem fixed. But I don't know. I think a lot will be. There's a rumor that he's had a bit of a foot issue the last month, so maybe this is just the circuit breaker you need. But all in all, like our goal kicking generally is pretty okay. 13-8, Carlton 16-6. I think they've kicked, 16-16, 16-13, and similar sort of stats to that last. Just wowzers. What the hell is happening with Carlton? But anyway, this isn't the Blues podcast. Anything else you wanted to cover? Midfielders are great. I think it was good to see Ben Hobbs getting a fair bit of love from the media. I think he's been solid for about 2 or 3 weeks now. I thought his game against North Melbourne was incredibly underrated. I think he went sort of head to head with Wardlaw a bit, and Wardlaw got a lot of the shine because he was a bit flashier. But Caldwell and Hobbs and Nick Martin as a young midfield, the depth coming through at the very least is encouraging to see.
It is. And look, there is one thing I just wanted to touch on lastly. It's semi-negative, but also mainly positive. That sort of first half where Carlton was sort of moving it, almost seemingly at will at times, when they got the ball out and the rebound, that came about because if you watched our players, they're all flying back to get into space to try and cover space, but they sort of forgot that they had that had opposition as well, so they had to watch their men. So that first goal that Carlton actually got when they come back inboard, poor Nick Martin was next to the Carlton bloke, but actually had run 15 metres to go fill the hole. And then all of a sudden realised his opponent was going to get the ball and had to turn around and try and sprint back. And they overlapped, and as a result, and he wasn't the only one in that first half that did that. There was a lot of that time there where our players were just more focused on covering that hole so that they weren't able to get that kick inside 50, and sort of forgot that they actually probably needed to also be aware of where their opponent was. And then when we came out in the second half, we just tightened that up so much better. If there was a man nearby, they went to the man. If there was no man nearby, they filled the hole. And so it was a credit to the playing group, and it was a credit to Brad Scott, because it clearly had to have been a message that he made to them at the halftime that they just needed to be more aware of their surroundings when they were on that sort of zone defense that we set up. And as a result, they implemented it well, and it was just a great thing to see. Alongside, as you said earlier, with the Zach Merritt move, that we had a coach that identified a couple of issues at halftime. We came out the second half, and the players fixed those issues on the back of what looked like some pretty strong messaging and really well done strategic wise from the coaching group.
Yeah, and I think Carlton's foot skills aren't great. I think we were just sort of hanging back, waiting for them to make the mistake, as opposed to, like you said, the correction was no, just put them under more heat. Like, make them execute their poor skills under more pressure than what they're doing at the moment. And you just saw that they folded. Their ball use going through the middle of the field was sort of atrocious at different points. Okay, well, that's probably about it. We've got a nice injury list sort of shortening down. The word is we should be expecting at least Darcy Parish back after the break, probably doing Shield as well. Sort of feels probably another week beyond that. James Stewart, he's appeared on the injury list, which is good to see, which means we'll certainly have our options for us against Fremantle. That probably just wraps us up now. We do have another pod going next week that we hope to have a very special guest on, and we'll let you know more about that as it comes to hand. But Bont, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure as always.
Well, that's this week's edition of the Bombercast. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and you tell your SNF supporting mates. Go Bombers.